So You Want to Be a Wizard by Diane Duane. So You Want to Be a Wizard is a young adult slash middle grade-ish fantasy novel published in 1983. It follows Nita Callahan, who is this 13-year-old girl living in New York City, and she discovers this book called So You Want to Be a Wizard, and discovers that with it she can actually do magic. She ends up meeting another kid, Kit Rodriguez, who's also a wizard, and together they end up having to face this looming threat that threatens to destroy their world. So I originally picked up this book about 20 years ago when I was about 10 years old, just because the cover was really interesting, and I read through it in like a couple of days because it's really good. It was really interesting. The story's really engaging. And so recently I thought, oh, I'm going to pick it back up again. Let's see, does it still hold up? Is it still as good as I remember it? And while maybe my opinion is a little tainted by nostalgia, overall, I'd say, yeah, it still holds up. It's still a great novel. Don't get me wrong, there are definitely some things that might cause some other readers to stay away from it. This book does take place in the 1980s, and it was written in the 1980s, and so it is a little bit dated. The pacing, the structures is a little bit different than books that are published nowadays, and so some people might get a little turned off from that. For me personally, that was actually kind of part of its charm as I was picking it back up again. Especially when we look at things like Stranger Things or The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel. We tend to like stories that take place in other generations because it has a sense of novelty, kind of a sense of like a bygone time, and that takes place here. I know there have been attempts by the writer and the publisher to have like updated versions of these books, but honestly, reading the book as it was, taking place in the 80s, like, that's actually nice. It's kind of fun. What really drew me to this story as an adult, however, was actually the villain. Especially in recent years, villains in children's stories, whether they're middle grade or even young adult, we have these big bads that are meant to have the sense of fear, the sense of omnipotence, and seem like they're impossible to fight against. But a lot of times they end up getting defeated, by either really simple means or they end up becoming sympathetic in some way that makes them a little less villainous, right? And in here, the big bad, the lone power, that doesn't happen. He's not defeated through simple means. He doesn't become really sympathetic by the end. And we don't like see him and be like, oh, he's just some dude. Like, no, he's still the lone power. And throughout the story, he is this very omnipresent, terrifying threat. And that was really compelling for me of like, oh, hey, this guy's actually scary. Like, even reading this as an adult, I'm like, oh, hey, this villain is actually a proper villain. And especially it's helped by a very rich, flowing writing that Diane Duane provides. Her writing style, even though this is a children's novel, I mean, she might as well be writing for adults. Her writing style is very complex, it's very descriptive, and it's fantastic. So, in summary, So You Want to Be a Wizard holds up really, really well for a book that is, at this point, 40 years old. Right? The story is beautifully and really well crafted. You have characters that are full of heart. There's adventure just lurking around every single corner. And you've got a villain who definitely stands the test of time. So if you are a fan of middle grade / YA fantasy, because it's kind of in between both of those ranges, like, this is a good book for you.